So what is the difference in owning a 99 years versus a freehold property? Hey phones, whose phones? We started recording already. Okay, so should you be buying a leasehold or a freehold property? Let's find out. Hi and welcome to episode 1 of Ask Andrew, where we answer frequently asked questions for all matters related to property. So today we're going to discuss the difference between freehold and 99 and which one you should be buying. There are pros and cons for both types of properties, so first things first, it's important for us to understand the differences between the two. Leasehold means that the property actually belongs to the state, so technically you don't own the property. You are actually leasing the property, in which you have to return the property or land at the end of 99 years. So by then you are no longer the owner. This also means that you don't get any form of compensation at the end of 99 years, and by then the value of your home is zero. Now of course, freehold means that you own the property or land indefinitely. You can pass it down for generations. Now having said that, do take note that regardless whether it's freehold or leasehold, there are provisions that allow the government to reclaim the land for vital infrastructure or other purposes. It is not common, but it can happen. For instance, if the government thinks that the land that your house is sitting on has better use if converted to a road for better traffic, they reserve the rights to reclaim that piece of land and of course compensate you for your property according to the valuation price. Now of course, most people have the common perception that the government may unblock the piece of land nearing the end of the lease, but that may not be the case. So if it's a HDB, the government may decide whether or not to unblock the piece of land and redevelop into a brand new property or into something else. Now if it's a private property, the unblock will depend on a lot of other factors. For example, firstly, there must be a certain percentage of homeowners that votes for an unblock. So an unblock community would have to be formed, and then a developer will have to come in to purchase the piece of land at an agreed price. So in short, a lot of stars will need to be aligned. And throughout history, there are actually a lot of properties that went through several attempts to go for an unblock but was not successful in doing so. Now, so next we talk about the CPF usage. So naturally, when we buy a property in Singapore, we will use our CPF monies as part of the down payment or even as part of the installments that come by subsequently. However, not many people know that depending on the age of the property that you purchase, there is actually a restriction in the amount of CPF monies that can be used. So the restriction applies for two scenarios. For instance, if the remaining lease of the property that you are buying is left with 55 years and you are aged 35, that adds up to 90 years in total, and as such, you have no issues in using your CPF to fund your purchase. However, if you are looking for a property with a remaining lease of 45 years and you are 35 years old right now, that will add up to 80 years only, which falls below 90. Therefore, the maximum amount of CPF that can be used is capped at a percentage of the lower of the purchase price and the value of the property at the time of purchase. Now there's a formula for that and we will show it on the screen right now, so feel free to pause the video. So I'll probably explain that in greater details in my next video, and I'll also leave a link right below if you'd like to find out the full technicalities of that. But what all this means is that if you are staying in a leasehold property that is of age, nearing the remaining lease of 60 years or even less than 60 years, then the next buyer will have difficulty in buying the property in view of the restriction. There will be maximum loan eligibility restrictions as well, which then causes older developments to generally depreciate in value with time. So on the flip side, if you own a freehold property, there are no restrictions in the usage of your CPF funds. So in other words, you're unlikely to land into a situation where it's harder to exit in view of the restrictions for CPF and loan from the next buyer. Now of course, the entry price for a freehold property is naturally higher than a leasehold. So if you were to compare properties in the same vicinity with the same age and size, you will notice that freehold development commands a higher premium at about 15%. So in other words, if a leasehold property is transacting at $1 million, then a freehold property in the same vicinity of similar size would be commanded at a price point of about $1.15 million. So technically what you are paying for is to own the property for perpetuity. So in other words, a freehold property will be more resilient in holding its price or capital appreciation in the long run, as the tenure does not decrease with time. Now, of course, if you plan to buy a property for investment purposes and you're looking to get a good rental yield for your property, now when we look at the rental, the first thing we have to do is to put ourselves in the shoes of a potential tenant. Say today, if I'm going to rent a property, it wouldn't bother me whether I'm going to rent a freehold or leasehold property. So what's going to probably matter to me will be things like the amenities, localities, condition of the house and stuff like that. So if there's going to be two different condos next to each other with similar aspects, but one is freehold, one is leasehold, it's going to basically command similar rates in terms of rental. So as an investor, because your entry price for a freehold property is higher, and yet you're going to get the same rental rates as the leasehold property that is next to you, naturally you will get a lower rental yield as a whole. But in exchange, it's going to be safer for a long-term hold as the tenure of your property does not depreciate with time, and thus the value of your property will be more resilient as a whole. So commonly, freehold properties are perceived to have better value than leasehold properties, but in reality, over the years, freehold properties, they have appreciated lesser than leasehold properties over the years. So here's a chart that we pulled out from 99.co. In general, you can see that freehold properties gain about 29% on average from 2010 to 2021. On the other hand, 99 years properties appreciated more at 48% on average. So there are various reasons why a freehold property usually appreciates slower. Now, the mentality of someone that buys a freehold property, they usually have the intention to live in a property for a really long time, or may have even the intention to pass it down to their kids. So as such, the volume of transactions in the same development will be lower, which causes the price to appreciate at a slower pace. Whereas for a leasehold property, most people have the intention to live for X number of years before they exit, and usually not for too long, regardless whether they are the first owners or second owners. So there's usually always a healthy sales transactions in a leasehold development, which steadily help the property to appreciate. So when you look at the condo, look at the nearby neighboring condos. What are the statuses that they have? If you are going to a place like the Coven area where there's so many freehold properties available, and if you're going to buy a 99 years leasehold, then it's not going to be so beneficial for you in the long run, as you don't position yourself as one of the better properties in the cluster. It largely depends on which district the property is in. For example, in prime districts where most of the developments are freehold, these kind of areas, usually the leasehold properties, they tend to perform poorly. So if you're deciding between freehold or 99, the most important thing is to find out what is the reason that you are buying that property in the first place. Now, we all buy properties with different needs and requirements. So if your intention is to buy the property for capital preservation in the long run, you plan to stay in the property for a very long time, or even have plans to pass it on to your kids as part of your legacy planning, and you don't want to worry about the depreciating tenure that would affect the value of your property with time, then I would think that a freehold property would probably suit you better. If you're looking for a more cost-effective approach with a lower entry price, because your intention is not for a long hold, you plan to move on to another property within a time span of maybe about 5 to 15 years, then a leasehold property will be a better decision. And of course, from the charts that I showed you earlier, usually a leasehold property will perform better than a freehold. In addition to the fact that leasehold properties tend to perform better in terms of capital appreciation in their earlier years before it gets too old. And that's it, guys. If you have any questions, do leave it in the comment section down below, and we'll answer that in our future episodes of our Ask Andrew series. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope that we have provided you with valuable insights today. If you have enjoyed our content, do remember to leave a like and consider subscribing, as that will help us to reach out this video to more people that could benefit from this. And I will see you in the next one.